You are listening to Key to the Bridge, brought to you by your friends at Keystone Therapy and Training Services, where we will be sharing human stories, talking about community resources, mental health, and wellness. This is a podcast for everyone. Welcome. Well, welcome everybody. We're here, episode 2. Key to the Bridge. I'm really excited. I'm really excited today. I mean, I was excited last time, but they were my sisters. So now we got 2 people here who I love a lot. Wow. And we are going to be talking today about a topic that I think is usually on the minds of folks at the beginning of a new year. And as we move into February, the month of love. Mm-hmm. And we're going to be discussing today about how we support people in our community caring for themselves, and also to how we care for ourselves as individuals, personally and professionally. I think it's a time right now where people are really trying to figure out how they're going to sustain and do better, you know, moving into the new year, of course, but also just in general. I feel like we're at that place now, about a year and a half post shelter in place, where people are trying to figure out what their new way of life or purpose or just how they're doing, and really assess what they want to do next, or if they're going to make some changes or leave things staying the same.
Sure.
And you all are straight fire, and I'm really excited for you to be here. So if you could just introduce yourselves, say who you are, and can you tell people what you do here at Keystone? And then could you also, tell us if you got to be an animal, what kind of animal you would be?
Ooh, that's one of my favorite check-in questions.
Yeah, just thought I'd throw it out there. Just as we're talking about caring for ourselves, if you could be an animal, what kind of animal you'd be? I'll start. I would be an elephant.
Why?
Mainly because I want a trunk. I'm going to be straight up. There's something about a trunk that is
Extra
just
attention.
rad.
Yeah.
You also can just swim, and you can knock stuff down, and generally people pay attention to you because you're so big. But you're also really gentle and smart, and you live in a community. I mean, they sleep in a sleep pile. I'm down for all of that. Trunk, sleep pile, swimming, elephant. That's what I want to do.
I'm into it. I'd like to be in a sleep pile as well.
Yeah.
Which I think my animal would be a polar bear.
Oh. Okay.
Mostly because I love the cold and swimming. And they're strong and powerful, but they're also super gentle. And they get to be outside in gorgeous places.
You also like to fish.
I also like to fish. I'm a hunter.
Oh, okay.
I'm a very loving hunter. My name is Megan Schweitz, and I am an associate clinical social worker at Keystone. I do many things. I do private practice therapy for youth, family, and adults. Additionally, I support our school's wellness team and program with clinicians and staff members supporting kiddos in school with mental health.
And you're a loving hunter.
And I'm a loving hunter.
Yeah, we might have to add that to your business card.
Lady.
That's
I appreciate that you led with that, because I think that's important for people to know.
it's super important.
The most.
Excellent. Go for it, sir.
Let's see. Let's start. Everyone started off with their animal. I was stuck between a shark and a whale.
They do have whale sharks.
That is correct. I'm not a huge fan of the whale shark, though. I'm not. They're overrated. Okay.
Okay.
I think I'm gonna go with. Blue whale.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go with blue whale. People are always fascinated by it. It's been around for a really long time.
Ancient.
A lot of wisdom. And they're always cruising. Not moving, you know what I mean?
Real slow.
Pacing themselves. So I think I'll go with the
people
whale.
don't bother blue whales really because
don't.
they're so big.
They're so big. It's like, I'm not dealing with that.
No.
Why would I do something stupid like that?
Just gonna say what's up and
keep it
let
pushing.
you keep going.
Yeah.
Nice to see you. Move on.
Drive-by combo.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay, well, what do you do here at Keystone?
As Megan was saying, I'm also associate clinical social worker, working with individuals, and hopefully we'll get some groups started. I have some real excitement around groups, and specifically with our male population. And Yeah, I think there's some other behind the scenes stuff here at Keystone that I'll be participating in terms of planning and strategy and
Kind of like the blue whale.
kind of like the blue whale.
Just cruising.
Just cruising.
behind
Just
the scenes.
cruising. Was that a?
Yeah, that was excellent.
it?
I just wanted, it's kind of odd on a podcast for people to like get to know people, a little bit. So we got to spice it up. Gotta,
You gotta keep the intrigue.
You got to keep the intrigue. And I'm sitting here with an elephant, a polar bear, and a blue whale, and I'm really excited about it.
Hey.
I'm really
Also,
excited.
All water animals
All into water.
into it.
Okay.
We're gonna have to take that apart later.
Yeah.
Episode 4.
I like it. Excellent. I forgot to introduce myself, just at least, Erica Bosky. I'm technically the owner and executive director of Keystone Therapy and Training
Literally.
Services.
Not technically.
I know, technically it's still weird. Maybe I just need my card to say like,
Queen bee.
or Queen Elephant.
Queen
Queen
elephant.
elephant.
There we go.
I don't know what their words are, but what do they call? I don't know what you call a queen elephant. Probably just the badass bitch matriarch. Maybe that should be on my business card.
Wow.
That.
Okay.
I'll make you a shirt.
Hunter.
Excellent. Excellent. I'm into it.
Hunters and that.
Gentle hunters
And matriarchs.
badass
Bringing the
matriarch.
heat. Bringing the heat. Well, that is a great segue. So today I was trying to figure out, and you're mulling around in your head, okay, what are we going to talk about? And what ends up happening, little unintentional experiment, is between Halloween and Christmas in the mental health and community resource field, the needs and requests for care of all sorts of different kinds increases.
Sure.
And so the first thing I wanted to ask the two of you is, what do you notice about yourself, either personally or professionally, as you kind of ebb and flow through the year? And what is the time of year where you kind of feel like your best self? And where is a part of the year where it's a little bit more challenging? Mm-hmm. So how that works for you personally or professionally, and then how do you notice that in the communities you work with and who you care for in your line of work? Yeah, go ahead.
Wow.
That's a mic
Yeah.
drop question straight out the gate, because if we're going to talk about loving yourself, we want to talk about how that flows throughout the year, because it changes. It's not the same all the time.
So this is true.
This is true.
I guess I can start. I've had a pretty, as I reflect on the last couple of years, for me, I've been in different parts of the country supporting people. And so, I think the first thing that came to mind was climates, because I was in Vermont for a little bit. And that's, seasonal depressive disorder is a real thing. Mm-hmm. And so I found myself probably struggling a bit more at this time of the year because of the lack of sunlight. Mm-hmm. Days were getting quite short. And so I am a huge fan of the sun, a huge fan of it. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't getting a ton of it, and I had to supplement with vitamins, and I had to get like one of those
The lamps.
to
I got
Vitamin
one of
D
those,
lamps.
too.
yeah.
Yeah, vitamin D lamp.
I
Crucial.
call it my happy lamp. That's what my dad used to call it.
Well,
Sign me up.
please. So I noticed that those were maybe the more, this point a couple of years ago was more challenging. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would say that I don't know. What's September? Yeah, what's right before
Fall?
Fall was a good time of kind of getting the ball rolling and feeling a little bit more in sync. And the weather was decent. We, stayed above 70 degrees. Vermont will drop well below zero. Mm-hmm. And that is definitely the time that I would say was the most challenging for me. But I do think that, I guess it depends on where you are, right? And when we talk about climates and how they affect people, if we're talking about the months of like October and November, year end, mm-hmm. I tend to think people are reflecting on what they want to leave behind, what they want to bring forward. Where does self-care fit into that? Where do they have the time to reflect? So I think that tends to be a more challenging time for people who I work with. as the year is coming to an end. They do feel that pressure. Everybody is, let me refrain from saying everyone. It's holiday time, which can be an additional pressure for people, either going to see their family or being very clear that they're not going to see their family. And so I think that, again, these things, it's not by chance that our year ends with these holidays. Right, this is not by chance that we do that.
Yeah, no, like we made up holidays to celebrate so that we don't just, collapse from darkness.
Absolutely.
And cold.
Yeah.
I also think people wanted to just drink at that point of the year because I'm pretty sure that's what most people do. A lot of people do in the winter. An uptick in sugar. Sugar in general.
100%.
I'm not an alcohol person, but I'm a baked goods. Get out of the way. Pie, cookies, candy, toffee. Sign me up. That's my holiday. Cruise control. Little sugar action.
Yep.
So it makes sense. But climate is I think something that we don't think about as much. And climate means a lot of different things because there's actual nature, and then there's the climate or the environment that you're in socially or emotionally.
Right.
Or where your house just is located, or do you have a house? I mean, there's lots of things to consider with climate and environment, so that makes sense. But you want to move towards the sun.
Yeah, I think at all times moving towards the sun. Yeah, lack of sunlight.
Oh, sorry.
And no, I'm just saying. I mean, I think not only if there's a lack of sunlight, but you think even if you're in a place where there is a ton of sunlight, what's your profession? Are you indoors 8 to 9 hours a day? Where is the time that you're, able to absorb some of that vitamin D? And again, if you're talking about people who take the time, like when do we have that time to sit down and think to ourselves, how much sunlight did I get in today? That's not the hot topic of conversation at at the water cooler or at the coffee shop. You know what I mean? It's just not something that that's high on the list. So yeah, I think the year end is usually pretty tough. I think when we talk about all the not only holidays, but like kind of some of the financial ramifications of coming to year end, and I need to buy gifts for people, and
let's be clear, you don't need to do anything. You don't want.
Well,
I'm
that
pretty sure you told me that.
Right, you don't have to do anything. Exactly. We don't have to do anything. You always have a choice.
But there is that expectation.
Sure. Right. So that pressure of the year end, and then we get into not only our family relationships, maybe our romantic relationships, our friendships, and then all those tie into like our relationship with ourselves. Like we're like, so what are you doing?
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
I am surviving.
I'm not sure what I'm doing. I mean, I made it here today.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's.
We're coming out of the winter. The sunshine lately has been nice. It was cloudy and it was cold and it was wet. And I typically, polar bear, like the cold. But I like cold sunshine, if that makes sense. So like cold weather, put a little bit of warmth of sun on the skin. So like I like the fall and the winter and the spring. Okay. Because of that mixed combo. I don't appreciate summer sunshine sometimes because I can't cool down, which is why I like to be in the water. Here we are. But I feel you with the SADS. It's a real deal. I'm not sure my Happy Land did a whole bunch. It's not the same as real sunshine.
It is not.
Winter is hard. I don't think we should be doing anything but like taking naps and drinking tea. Or alcohol, or whatever
combination.
Preferred
whatever.
Beverage you have.
We should be hydrated and we should be resting.
We should be hydrated and resting from October
till Valentine's Day.
To Valentine's.
I agree. It's
the off season.
Hydrated and resting. That should be what we do during that time period. I agree.
It's tough.
Well, we have those built into like some of our it's people's religious practices, right? When we talk about fasting and when we actually think about some holidays.
Yeah.
technically should be shutting it down.
Yeah,
right.
shut it down.
Idea,
Not us.
not us. No,
No.
we are. Yeah, no,
We're the
no,
go,
no.
the go culture.
Go.
Like, let's do all the things.
Well, and you asked specifically in our profession, in
Yeah.
like the mental health field of taking care of other people. So then you're tired and not getting enough sunshine or whatever it is in the winter. And everybody else has the additional stressors of expectations of family and holidays or deadlines for the end of the year with large corporation companies. Or like it's just traveling, doing things you don't want to do because of the pressure of people having those expectations. So then we're caring for those people in the winter, and it's like twice as hard. So like, how are you going to take care of yourself while everybody else is like struggling in that same part? Because summer, we're laid back, mostly like because I've been in a school system for so long. Like summer's off, just like not having to answer emails or having a loose schedule and kicking back. Like, I do better sometimes when you have that time off and like you don't have all that pressure, the outside pressure, and the sunshine.
Yeah, I guess too I'm thinking about how the way we are all deciding to care for ourselves and we are supporting people of all different walks of life and what terms of what that looks like. Because I do think self-care has gotten to be this kind of catch-all statement of a way to give permission to do things for yourself that are also just like basic survival.
Sure.
I mean, if one more person hands me a self-care list that says drink water, get sleep, eat healthy foods, and go outside, that's not a self-care list. That's a stay alive human list. And I think self-care is like a notch up from that list. But that's what we're given. And so I'm just thinking about what you all are talking about right now, being outside, hydrating, rest, and those types of things. Like that should be, in some ways, like a given.
The baseline. But
at a minimum.
But not everybody has that baseline.
Correct, which is an interesting way to think about how we're caring for ourselves. Like if you can't sleep or stay hydrated or eat, then what are we doing? Like that's just a question to think about in terms of care. And that word care is even gotten to this place of, well, if I get like, I'm not, because I do this, right? When I get in a manicure, I do that. It's an hour, it's scheduled, and I do it. But that kind of lives in this weird little bubble versus what does it look like day to day or month to month to adjust what it is we need in terms of care. And so my next question is, how do you support yourself in giving yourself permission? Because that's some of what it is that we need. Like, how do you make sure that the permission for your care like actually happens? Because we all have checks and balances with that, whether we like to admit it or not. Because we thrive in a culture that requires us to have permission to take care of ourselves, right? Think about our jobs. Like you're only allowed to need to be sick like 5 to 10 days out of a year in most jobs. That's all you get. You're not allowed to have any more days.
Unrealistic.
That's how many days you get. So how do you all deal with that for yourselves? Like giving yourselves the permission you need to care.
Well, that's been a process over the years of learned behavior. And like, I just had a conversation with someone the other day around, we were talking about self-love and self-care. And it's like, how do I know what I need if I hadn't had it for so long? Like in your identity, if you've given to others for so long that you no longer know what brings you joy and what you want to be into and like the time to spend for yourself, and how to deal with the guilt, like this looming guilt of like, well, I didn't do enough for myself today, or I would like to do more yoga, but I didn't get to it today. And not getting down on yourself for when you don't get to the things you want to do to take care of yourself, and like being like, that's okay, today I needed to rest. So it's a balance. And the guilt factor of like letting it go and meeting yourself where you're at. Like I've had to meet myself where I'm at. And what that looks like can vary from day to day, from month to month.
Sure.
I can have the days where all I'm doing is napping and hydrating because I'm too exhausted to do anything else. And then I have the days where, like, I do all of the things. I get to do the yoga, and I get to do my skincare routine, and I get to draw a little, and I get to go outside for a walk, and I get to see my friends, and I'm hecka productive at work. But, like, that's not every day. So it's like, how do you find the balance between the things that you want to do more of? Don't talk about the shoulds. I don't use the word should. Shouldn't do anything. How do you do more of the things you want to do because of the way they're going to make you feel?
Sure.
And, like, the things you need to do to stay alive.
Stay alive.
The balance is hard.
It's super hard. And I think about it, too, with the amount of families we work with. And family is an interesting word, right? I mean, whatever that means. But the amount of caregiving that goes into the families or the circles of community that you're a part of, because family doesn't necessarily fit for everybody's group. But that's something that I think that I would generally say as a generation, are also trying to figure out what it looks like in that dynamic. That it's okay as a caregiver in your household to also dial it up or dial it back, and that the group that you're with on a regular basis is trying to figure that out as well, right? And I'm with small kids all the time in my house, and trying to, like, teach them about rest, or about listening to your body, or about joy or pleasure, or, like, just other words around what it looks like. And then it's also okay for mommy to be like, no, y'all, see these jammies? Mommy in them all day. Not going
I love an all-day jammy
anywhere.
day.
I'm not going anywhere. You all want to go outside? You can go. You can go outside. I'm going to stay here, and I'm going to do what rest can look like with 4 kids in a house and a hubby. But it looks different. But there's guilt. You know, that guilt. I think this is an interesting, I hadn't thought about necessarily that word, but the guilt. Ooh, look at us. The guilt that comes from loving and caring for yourself. Oof.
Wow.
That's a lot.
I think I was supposed to, like, snap or something after that. Like, yes, you're right.
The guilt. Because it is, right? Because I'm with you. There is, like, a thing, right? You got to look. I'm looking at eight eyeballs who are like, let's go, da, 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 and I'm like, dude.
Are they, like, twinkly with the dog tears?
You know,
that are
like
just
the little,
at you?
and I'm like, okay, right? But that, you gotta, like, ride that way, and that happens a lot throughout the day. I think about, now that you're talking about, I think, Megan, I'm like, dude, think of, or, like, the text message you don't want to respond to.
I'm at your house.
I know, but all the things, like, oh, I don't want to talk to that person right now. I don't want to respond to that text.
Yeah.
I don't want, like, how do you?
I'm overwhelmed. I'm maxed out. I can't do this right now. Like, you have a need that I can't fill because I haven't filled my need first.
Yeah, but that's like.
And not feeling guilty about taking care of yourself first, or answering the email 3 days later because you don't have a response.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I'm getting hot while you're saying it because I'm uncomfortable with that. That's tough. Like,
it's hard
really
to work
tough.
on. And, like, where does that guilt come from? Like, who?
Well,
I know.
That's like a whole. Like, that could be a whole series.
Of podcasts.
Where does the guilt come from?
Where does the guilt come from?
Oh, write it down. Who's taking
It's
notes?
all recorded.
Oh, good.
It's being recorded. We don't have to write it down.
We don't have to do any of that.
But I just think that's. I just think you all are bringing up the typical, right? Like, the thing that's left out sometimes of getting what it is that you want, right? Like, there's a give and a get, right, of everything that you do. And so if you're loving on yourself, then you're not necessarily, you could be, but loving on other people as much, because there's only so much of that you can do at the same time. So,
Only so much
I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's a couple words that came to mind were kind of like boundaries. There's got the word discipline kind of came into mind as a practice, right? You have to practice that, like what you're talking about, that self-care. Self-discipline. It's like, okay, I have to be able to have part of that practice again, it's like sharpening that knife, right? But I also think that there's some real value in our relationships, right? And that our relationships are connected to our overall health and well-being, right? So sometimes I struggle with the concept of self-care when we think about it literally, where it's like the pressure of it's you have to do it. It's like, well, when you're going to get a manicure, there's someone else involved in your self-care process, right? There's usually someone else involved in it at some point.
Correct.
And some of that pressure that might be put on in, like, you know what I mean, that we're putting on ourselves is like, it's like self-imposed. They're like, this is all on me because the word says self. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily what it means.
Should it be like we care?
Pretty much.
Our care? I'm trying to think about it. Like us care.
Yeah.
Or like we love. I don't know. Like another way. That's an interesting way to think about it. Because you don't do it by yourself.
You don't. I think that this concept that I think in our work, we stress that to the people we work with, that you're not in this by yourself. There's a reason why maybe we're in session individually, or maybe you're in a group, or whatever services you're participating in. There's a reason why you're not doing this by yourself, because this would be very, very difficult, right? So, I think the relationships, again, if we get caught up in this routine of go, 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 and we don't have the discipline to take our time and say, okay, I'm not going to participate in this go culture, then I don't have the time to self-reflect, take inventory of what it is that I need, what it is that I want. And so I go back to what's helped me is the relationships. If I'm surrounding myself with people who are having those conversations, which I'm not saying is easy, right? But that's taken time for me. It's taken a long time for me to be honest about who I'm spending my time with. Is it someone who's mentioning like, oh yeah, you know what, like who's asking me like, oh, so what have you been doing for yourself, or what's been working, what's not been working, you know? And I would have never thought that was going to be, me. If I'd have looked back 5 years ago, or 3 years ago for that matter, I couldn't have, foreseen this, where I'm surrounding myself with people who are generally having these conversations, right? It's a part of the practice.
That's important.
Right. So like all parts of our health and well-being, right? So if it's our physical health, it's like, I didn't want to drop it in there, but I thought the hike, possibly. That's like
my potential second date hike.
Yeah, I didn't want to really bring it
okay.
up, but
we don't have to say his name.
No, we're not going to. But
the second date hike, it's a real thing. It's a mixture of a lot of things going on there.
Sure, but I was
who I'm spending my time with.
Yeah,
how we're moving our bodies, the environment we're choosing to be in,
who you're with.
Right. Like think about the people who are dating right now, and like our dating culture. Oh, it's really easy. Well, let's go get a drink, or let's go get drunk. And it's like, well,
let's ease the tension.
We're gonna go into a dark room and sit, and there's nothing wrong with that. Please, like let me be clear.
We sat outside under the heater lamps.
Yeah, but it's like, do you have those options at any point in time? It's like, I've found that those kind of dates are actually really great when you're in like a really beautiful environment. You are getting vitamin D, or getting fresh air. It's like, oh yeah, there's something a little bit different. Activities, right? That aren't centered in something that maybe are not supporting your overall health. And
and Joseph, like, you're amazingly like dovetailing into the next thought or question that I've been thinking about too, is the genderizing of even what we're talking about, how you're going to love and care for yourself, is also very genderized in
100%.
our culture and our communities, right? Yesterday, football was in my house, like all day.
Go sports.
Yeah.
Go sports.
I've been waiting to say that on air for so long.
Go sports.
Go sports.
Just go sports. Right?
For those of you out there listening, you know.
Yeah, go sports.
Go sports.
Go sports. And it's one of those things where I'm an athlete, but my my love is into swimming. It's
Sure.
like if I had to pick one thing,
Yep.
I'd a swimmer. Hence elephant. So I just was thinking about it yesterday, right? Because there was an element of care happening that I just thought of yesterday, getting ready for this morning, where Ryan's idea of care yesterday was football.
Sure.
And there's a ritual of what sports can do, and I get all of that. The care, talk about your relationship, right? So I'm like, okay, my person loves this as care. How am I also going to get some care out of this,
Sure,
right?
sure.
And I was thinking about it. I like the social part
The social aspect, yeah.
of that.
Yeah.
Having snacks.
having
eating,
snacks, being with people.
hanging on the couch.
Yeah, it's loud. I like it when there's like 9 different chip bowl options. Like that's a good day, right? Get 3 kinds of Doritos. We did.
Please.
Tapatio, Cool Ranch, and nacho cheese. Okay.
Did she bring that bag of Tapatio chips
She
out
did
of
bring
our
the bag.
kitchen?
Yeah, we only brought 1 bag of Tapatio.
That
P.S.
stuff's going off the shelves.
Tapatio Doritos are back. They were gone.
okay.
They're not back.
Hot.
Okay.
Oliver's and Windsor.
Yeah. Side note: 3 types of Doritos yesterday. That brings me
Sure.
some care, right?
Yeah.
I was standing in my kitchen for like 5 hours yesterday, but I was super happy about it. And
Right.
so it wasn't until this moment where I think about all the types of care that were happening. The children were running around, they were getting care, socializing, jumping off of things, all sorts of different types of care going on. Other people came over to our house, also not necessarily watching the game, but like enjoying each other.
Yeah, I don't ever come over to watch the game.
No, we come, we other
Sports
reasons.
ball days?
No,
I'm in the
sports
kitchen
ball
eating
days.
snacks and
Sports ball days.
yelling occasionally because it's fun to yell, and I have no idea what's going on.
Well,
But I like spending time with all my people.
right. So I'm just thinking about what you all are talking about in
Yeah.
terms
Sure.
of like what does it look like when we find those
Sports ball days.
sports ball days.
Sorry.
Go sports. I'm going to be stuck on that. That was a lot of strength for me not to get straight to inappropriate innuendos. So I held back on sports.
We're going to put a
balls.
disclaimer on this episode.
Yeah, it's cool. It's fine.
Yeah.
But it's a different type of what you're talking about with care,
Sure.
right? So this idea, right, of however you identify within your gender,
Sure.
there's even norms within that of how you're supposed to care for yourself or not allowed
Yeah. I mean,
to care for yourself.
Yeah, I think that there's pretty clear messaging about kind of what self-care is and who it's for, if we're talking about kind of mainstream thought of self-care. And yeah, usually that excuse me, in my work with male clients, that self-care can very much be sports, right? And yeah, it's a great kind of connection that you made with the game yesterday, because it was a really complex kind of situation going on. You had people who legitimately would be affected by the outcome of the game. So their self-care is again, this idea of self is funny, because not only is it dependent on the outcome of the game, but by the people who are playing the game. The people in the room watching the game or not watching the game. Like, there's so many different, exactly, right? Again, as you were talking about, enjoying sports, it's like, yeah, I love sports, but sometimes I could truly give a shit, because
It's the environment.
yeah, well, so I just came back from being out of the country, and I haven't seen in a country where I didn't, speak the primary language. But I've been in social situations. I've been in consistent family kind of gatherings, right? And I've been kind of like observing, but not necessarily actively participating, because it's hard to communicate in that way. But that was the first time that I've been back in that kind of setting where I could participate. And it was like re-entry into participating into a larger social event. So I was more excited, like, okay, I can sit and I can choose to participate in this conversation. I can choose to participate in this conversation. Oh, I can tap out and watch the game for a second. Okay, cool. but I was in that observant mode, right? I was in the observant mode. So
Talk about choices.
So that it's really interesting that you talk about the self-care process with the game, because I think that I was able to observe some of those yesterday that you're talking about.
100%. But I also think about how it's taken me time to learn that it's okay for me to look at a situation and think about what I'm going to get out of it.
Sure. Yeah.
That
absolutely.
I'm allowed to do that.
Yeah.
Because I'm speaking for myself, but identifying as like a heterosexual female, that's not how you're coached to behave most of the time in life. You're supposed to serve and take care and put people before yourself. And so to sit even in that simple Sunday afternoon, and I literally did, I thought, I'm like, how am I gonna enjoy today?
Yeah.
Because I got to figure out how that's gonna work for me.
Sure.
So I'm not annoyed. That, but that's a thought process that has taken a lot of time to figure out how to do that in certain situations.
And so I think one of the tough things, as I kind of circle back, I went on a little tangent there, but one of the tough things of working, not tough, but one of the common things that I find when working with men is they haven't even began to explore this idea of what they're doing. Is it a self-care process? Like, yeah, what you're doing right now is enjoying something that brings you some form of fulfillment. Now, if we go back to that concept, what we're talking about self, who's involved, what is the thing we're involved in? Well, if you're spending every Sunday getting fucked up from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m.
8 a.m.
Well, it depends. Yeah, there's, you know what I mean? Like, but we're talking about rituals, right? Like, there's rituals and practices. It's like, it's Sunday. Like,
this is what we do.
This is what we do. We're up barbecuing, tailgating. You know what I mean? It doesn't.
I do love a tailgate.
Who doesn't love a tailgate? You know what I mean? But that's what I say. We're talking about a ritual and a practice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that idea of like, we're talking about like mainstream heterosexual masculinity of this idea of like, do you even know that you are caring for yourself?
For yourself.
Like how, and if you are, how are you doing it? And what are I think one of the things that there also is the learning is how is whatever you're choosing to do affecting everybody else too.
Everyone else, sure.
Right. And like that's a tough.
And talking about the ability to like reflect and evaluate what you're doing and how it makes you feel too is a process of like men and or women might not be asking themselves like, did what I do today, was that good? Like, did I like that? Do I want to do that again? Do I want to do something different? Because we're not always taught to reflect.
No, and what I also love is when you're young, you don't have that filter as much. One of the reasons I love kids is because if they don't like something, you're going to know about it.
Yeah. I don't want to do that again.
I don't want to do that again.
No thanks.
I did not like that.
Yeah.
And if they like something, if they love it, it's like it's very clear. Where as we age, I think too there's things that I have practiced in and they weren't really helping me.
Sure.
But I did them for whatever reason because I thought that I was supposed to, or
didn't want to let somebody down,
or it sometimes it's just a compromise, which is fine too. Like that's all good, but I do think there's a process as you age where you you know what I mean? Because I think about how many people are out there who do something and they're like, oh, this I like this. Do you really like it? You know, and the reflecting, right? Because I think about the reverse. I think about how many. Like the opposites of things, right? Like where there might be one group of people that really say they love sports, but they would like rather, I don't know, do something, whatever the opposite of sports is.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They would rather do that, but they do it because of X, Y, and Z. And then there's people who might be into like gardening for whatever reason, but they would rather do something else.
Sure.
Or that idea that you've been doing something for so long, you don't know what else you would do, and that's just what you're supposed to be doing because you're good at it, but you might not necessarily like it.
Yeah, and is that serving you?
Well, I feel like we're kind of trickling into
Well, and this
so many
is
aspects of life, right?
correct.
Yeah.
And that's why, us talking about this today, I think is really important because we need to kind of like blow up this concept of
Self-care.
love and care.
Yeah.
We need to move away from the marketing of what this is like right now and make it broader in whatever way that means for each person.
Sure.
But I think we come into people in our work who come in with this checklist. Like, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this, I'm doing this. And why am I still not happy?
Well, you were saying something and it triggered something for me, and we were like, oh, we don't even like saying self-care. Like, what do we want to call it? And I was like, how about just self-enjoyment, which I know is hard because we might not always be enjoying what we're doing or be happy. But, like, the idea of finding things that bring you happiness and enjoyment, like self-enjoyment. I don't know. Like, it's like, yeah, you're caring for yourself, but you're finding things that are fun. And, like, self-care is all the things. It's drinking the water and taking a shower and getting your nails done and going to a football game and talking to your grandma on the phone. Like, it's all of the things.
Sure.
So, like, what's a better way to say that?
Well,
It's not like a menu.
Yeah. Well, that's, I think, part of that discovery of what is your self-care also requires a lot of hardship. It's not an easy process. We talk to the people we work with. I'm like, this is not going to be an easy path to finding your self-care process or practice, because there's going to be a lot of change. There's going to be questioning, and none of that shit is easy.
No.
So you're talking about breaking practices, ritual cycles. This has been for some of the kids that you're talking about. I mean, I just think about the kids who, if we're talking about sports for, again, young men, I'm trying to think about what's something that young women...
Oh, no, I'm over here thinking, you're saying sports, and I'm thinking about going relative, like, even, like, being a mom. So, like, if you're, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're a man, you're supposed to play sports. And if you're a woman, you're supposed to have babies.
You have babies.
And, like, that's what
and
you're
we're
supposed
pushing
to
that
do.
on you, exactly.
That's what you're supposed to do. Or men are supposed to make money, and women are supposed to have babies, right? And, like, that's the lanes that you're pushed into to, like, think about how your life is going to be fulfilled, right? So if you're a man and you have tons of money and you can provide,
yes,
you're supposed to be happy. You will have achieved.
Happiness will come. Happiness will come second.
Yeah, happiness will just roll in.
Yeah.
As long as you have the money and you're providing. If you're a woman, you pump out a couple kids. You are supposed
Euphoric.
to be. You have fulfilled all greatness.
Utopia's here.
And I do think
I can't even.
I know, but I do think there's this sense of, okay, now what? Or if I don't choose that, now what?
Sure.
Or if I don't even fall into these really binary norms that we're talking about, that really, the binary sucks of just these, like, always being two options.
Yeah.
That just, it narrows all of these concepts of conversation around what does this look like for you to be whoever you are and enjoy most of your life. You're not going to enjoy it all the time, but it should hopefully be more of a majority.
Sure.
That's the goal, right?
Yeah.
The goal is to, like, I have so many things. The goal is to love yourself and love your life. Like, for that's a goal to work towards. Like you said, with our clients, it doesn't mean every day is going to be rainbows and unicorns.
Sure.
But there are going to be moments that feel good, and finding the littles, right? The little moments along the way that do feel good, and knowing you're working towards something, like your greater why. Like, why am I doing this stuff? How is it going to make me feel? But we're not taught to brag about ourselves in, like, being good at something or liking something. I mean, we are. It's in a competitive way of, like, oh yeah, you're first place in the race today. Like, you're the best at this. But to be taught of, like, be happy for what you accomplished and how you felt. Like, instead of saying you get a first place prize because you're the best, like, how did you feel today when you crossed the finish line before everybody else? Nobody asks you how you feel about the stuff that you're doing.
No. We're not. Yeah, we don't.
Not always.
We don't
Sometimes
do a lot of that.
we would like to work towards that more.
Yeah. I mean, I'm thinking about how we all got into this line of work or even just having this conversation. And I'm laughing in my mind because I'm like, well, we would be like out of business if we were decent at what it is that we're talking about, like as a society.
Sure.
True.
Well, that's the goal, isn't it? Right?
That's our goal.
The goal is for us to be unemployed.
The goal is to
be fired.
not have a
we
job.
Don't need you anymore.
We don't need you anymore.
Beautiful.
You all are doing so well. You don't need a therapist.
You know what? You all love yourselves so much.
Yeah.
Like our sign in front right now. You love yourself so much.
So much.
That you don't
need to talk to anybody.
But back to this point, if you don't have connections, then how is that even going to work? How are you going to know what you know? But it is an interesting concept because I do think that we've gotten to a point where we've made it seem so outside of us, where if you look back, way back in history, there was a period of time where we supported people in whatever it is that they wanted to do. Like looking at your gifts, the way you contribute.
Yeah.
This concept of purpose, like other words that we're figuring out how to do it, but we don't talk that way. People still ask you like, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? Nobody says like, what would you like your purpose to be?
Sure.
Yeah.
Those are different questions.
I don't know if I'm ever going to grow up.
That's okay.
And I'm still lots of different things.
Right.
But I'm still figuring it out. And having the grace and patience, I tell a lot of my clients, like having the grace and patience to be okay with not having all of the answers, of like you're just figuring it out and taking one day at a time.
Yeah.
And putting the guilt on a shelf and like meeting yourself where you're at. And like talking, like checking in with your body, like, okay, I sat on a couch for 5 hours. How does my body feel? Do I feel rested or do I feel like I need to go take a walk?
Yeah, but we're literally talking about this concept of self or care or love in a way that I think we are trying to undo what we're taught for a very long
we're
period
undoing
of time.
Extensive learned behavior. But like our thoughts of how we think about self-care or not self-care or feeling guilty, talk about the guilt of like, that's not your fault. Like the fact that you feel guilty, that's not your fault to have that thought. That's a thought that has been pushed on you by your environment and your relationships and expectations of society. And it's like you can choose how you want to change that thought and explore that, and that's challenging.
Yeah.
And you gotta live your life. Like, so it's not gonna be rainbows and unicorns all the time.
It's not.
No.
And that's okay too.
Sometimes it's shit storms and puddles.
Wow.
It's happening. It's just going deep. It gets out of control.
Yeah, it does. It does get out of control. And so I do think that though there's this shift that's happening. I know I'm speaking for myself, but literally since the beginning of shelter in place until now, this conversation has been magnified. And I think it's also partly because people spent a lot of time with themselves, whether they liked it or not. Right?
Or with people that they couldn't get away from.
And so many things that you could do to bring yourself joy or enjoyment, right, were gone. I mean, there was a period of time where whatever it was, like at 5 o'clock, people were walking outside and howling.
Right.
I will never forget that as long as I live
have a
with the
picture of your
pandemic.
babos doing that.
Yeah, and I thought to myself, like, why it was happening, that, like, this is how much people need human connection.
Sure. Yeah.
Right? Like, that's the level of care. Like, just to stand on your porch and hear other humans
Howling.
making noise that weren't in your house brought joy and connection. And so I do think there's a shift. There's a shift that's happening in understanding what this looks like moving forward. Because I do think people want it to be different, some of it to be different than it was before shelter in place. Like they're now aware of things that they might have not been aware of before. And so that's something, that I would love to hear your guys' thoughts on is, what do you think are some of like a main shift that you've noticed since shelter in place? right?
That's
so
entirely.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll go first while I'm
Yep.
marinating on this. So
Specific to self-care.
yeah,
or
specific
love.
to self-care, right? My thing is time. And I think this is speaking personally.
Yeah.
I became very aware of time during shelter in place because there was tons of it at times. And then at other times it was like, where did it go? Or what day is it? Or also having a pace.
I still don't know what day it is.
But just a pace of also with time being extremely different.
Sure.
And I am fighting tooth and nail to not going back to that feeling of time. I don't want to do it anymore. So, like, for example, today, all of my babies were asleep. They were out cold. And I was like, okay, well, what do I do? Usually, I would have gone in and woken them up. We got to be at school at this time. We have to be at Maria's at this time. Whatever. My morning was starting a little later today, and I knew if I was a few minutes late, it would be okay. So I let my kids sleep because I had the flexibility. If I had to be somewhere at a certain time, I would have woken their butts up, and we would have done what we normally did. But I had the time, so I took it.
Yeah.
There was a period of time in my life I never would have done that. It wouldn't have even entered my mind to do it. But today I did. I let them sleep until they woke up. How many minutes were we late? I timed it 11.
Yeah.
We were 11 minutes late. We moved a little quicker once we got up, but we moved a little quicker, I think, because everyone
That's
was
a general
rested.
time frame that everyone should accommodate for on
11
either
minutes?
side. We just talked about this morning.
Yeah, a little 11.
Like
11.
10 to 15 minutes leeway of like grace period.
Yeah. But they were completely different humans because I didn't roust them from their sleep.
Right.
Sure.
So for me, that's something that I'm holding on to real tight from that experience is I don't want time
Yeah.
to feel like that anymore. Like, what am I going to say yes to? What am I going to say no to? How am I going to do it in a different way?
Yeah.
Because I can't do it. And I have the privilege and the opportunity to do that.
Sure,
That might not
right,
always
right.
be the case for everyone.
Right.
But I'm going to try
Yeah, yeah. No.
because I'm not doing it anymore. Does that help? 'Cause Megan's over here.
Breathing.
I'm having some PTSD of like thinking about like what did I do? I'm an entirely different scenario that I live in a house with a roommate who is your youngest sister, and it's just the two of us. We didn't have kids or a family, but we did had to keep working because we worked in education of that like distance learning and having to not leave like the travel time. It is time, but like having more time for myself to do the things to get ready for the day, like whale action of like I was a little bit slower because I was given more time of like, oh well, you actually don't have to drive 45 minutes. Now you get to do a yoga podcast or sit on the porch and have a cup of coffee. Or like accommodating of like I don't really want to do that today, like I'm gonna take a break and pause. That's hard.
So, but what you're
I think
talking
it is
about
time-
is like, listening to what you got to attend to your needs.
Yeah, I wasn't
wants.
rushing
Sure.
the rush, the go go
The
go.
go,
I
yeah.
wasn't driving somewhere trying to beat traffic, trying to get out of the house on time and all the things. It was just like, oh, I just have to like get to my computer by a certain time.
Yeah.
And I was given so much more time.
Do you feel like now you're trying to still do some of that? Something you're trying to keep?
I'm trying, but it's hard. It's decreased. It's decreased a lot of like the time I have to do stuff because I have to be certain places more often. It's different.
It's different. You miss it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If I didn't work with humans, I probably would be really good at working remotely from home and being able to take breaks when I want to, and I don't have the demand of serving other people. It's hard, and working that in of like, oh, I'm going to go for a walk at lunchtime instead of sitting at my desk and eating and trying to catch up on notes or emails.
Yeah.
And like
It's
making
hard
those
to do-
choices.
It's harder to do headstands at work.
It's harder to do headstands at work.
Yes.
I mean, There was a time.
Plus, you have to wear like appropriate clothing and shoes and.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wearing just yoga pants and sports bras and tank tops all day.
No.
I know. I miss it.
I miss it.
Yeah, I'm also keeping elastic in my pants. That's also something that's staying.
Bike shorts all day.
I'm being straight up. I'm never going back
Stretchy clothes.
to a fitted bottom ever again.
Professional sweatpants.
Yeah, forever. Like some form of elasticy, yoga-y, stretchy pants.
Yeah.
I'm never.
Yeah, but
Never
I
went back.
was given the opportunity to like take care of myself more because I wasn't serving people as much by traveling to get there. But additionally, things were taken away from me that I loved. When they shut down the parks, when I couldn't go walk in nature and take a hike, I was like, this is the dumbest thing. No one knows what's going on. I was walking around my neighborhood like endlessly. I'm like, how are we supposed to do this? I'm like searching in the grass for ladybugs, just like anything to like connect to nature. Because I was like, what do you mean I can't go take a walk in a park? So if I pass somebody for 2 seconds, I'm going to die. And I was like, this is ridiculous. So like things were taken away and I couldn't see my people. The community changed. I was seeing everybody over a computer. So I missed that. Talk about the things you miss that you like to do more of. Spending time with your people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oof.
Well, it's just the real. Like, we need time to reflect and process. Like, and we haven't really had it to think about, like, what we want to do now, right? Because we just haven't.
Sure.
Masks came off. Things got open. Let's go. It's like, okay, well, maybe we should reassess a little bit, like, before we just go, you know?
Although some school, I mean, I feel like part of it, a lot of schools are starting later after distance learning and the pandemic. Schools are opening at like 9 o'clock now instead of 8 o'clock because it's easier for people to get there. It's kinder. Like, yeah, open your school at 9 o'clock.
Yeah. What about you, friend?
Things that I'm trying to keep. Maybe I'll come back to what I would want to keep. Although I do agree with kind of how we dress and how we are approaching, how we feel appropriate to like present is never gonna go. We're never gonna go back. That's just we're done with the like, taking. I mean, everyone is different, but I think majority we're just in a much more relaxed place. Like, there's no more need to like have like super uncomfortable shoes at your job and be expected to stand, or you know what I mean. Like, hats off to anybody who's still wearing uncomfortable shoes at their standing desk. You know what I mean? Like
1980s pumps.
Keep it going.
Yeah.
But I think that with the restriction, I think we all, people came out and reevaluated what their kind of beliefs and values were once some of those kind of privileges and rights were taken away. And so whether you liked it or not, you did some searching, whether that was finding out things about yourself because you had time to spend with yourself, and or maybe you had help from the person who you were with, who maybe you didn't want to be with during the pandemic. But then I also think that if people are taking a bit more inventory again on even if it's a friendship or a romantic relationship
Or your job.
I mean, just people are not putting up with the same stuff anymore. There are some people who will continue, right? But I do think there are quite a few people who had some time to think about where am I going, where have I been, and how and I've seen it's interesting. I've seen this with maybe more like 18 to 25-year-olds.
We're talking about van life?
Not
sourdough bread.
I was talking about I was going to go to their van life. I mean, that's real. That's real too.
Dude,
the nomad.
we talked about
Nope,
it.
I'm gone.
Shelter in place would happen when I was in high school. Peace out.
Oh, I'm out. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Definitely over the 18 to 25.
Oh, yeah, gone.
Bye.
Yeah, I've noticed almost. I've noted, because we're thinking about folks who were early in their development in their relationships, and they know we'll never understand it, but for a point in time, they thought the person they were with may be the last person that they're ever with. And we don't understand what that's like, to be like, oh yeah, it's like, oh, we're together now, you're my girlfriend. It's like, no. This is it. You know what I mean? Like,
we might not make it.
We may not make it.
We might not make it.
So we see that in movies where it's like, oh, the world may end tomorrow, but they live
that actually happened.
They were like, oh, this might be.
I had some friends. They got engaged. They're getting married.
Right.
They met 2 months before the pandemic.
So I think that there's we're seeing maybe a more serious approach to relationships now, not just with romantic, but friendships. If this is in any way present some type of harm or potential danger, I think people are really quick to say, nope, no, I'm all right. Or they're and they may be very clear early on about what the expectations are in the relationship. I'm noticing that more. Again, I can't speak for everyone, but I've seen that with some of the folks that I've worked with, where there is some clarity early, which is about what's important, what the expectations of the relationship are, boundary, you know what I mean? Which, in a sense, can be helpful. It can be really helpful. But yeah, I think those are some things. I mean, we've known that there are, and I'll throw the word out there. I think that there are some aspects of desperation where people really have recognized, like, oh, this isn't permanent. Like, this could happen again. What if it happens again? Who am I with? How does that inform me of the people that I want to? Do I want to go hang around a fucking hunter from now on? Because
we could survive.
We would be good.
We would be good. I got skills.
She's gonna fish. She's gonna kill something. We're good to go.
And we're gonna be warm.
And we're gonna be super warm.
So cozy.
You know what I mean? But that's real. I think we tapped back.
Reals, yeah.
What are we actually wanting?
I think we may have tapped back into some more of our kind of instinctual selves. Primal selves. Like, can you protect me? Right? Can you not?
Are you going to help me protect myself?
Are you going to help me protect myself? If we get stuck in a room, can you literally handle me losing my shit? And then being able to, like, say, "Whew, you lost your shit the other day," like, now it's my turn,
Yeah. Well, because what you're saying though, I'm just thinking about this. I'm talking about time, like how you want to enjoy time, use time. Megan's talking about the awareness of having what you need for there to be space to really think about what you need and like how you're going to get it and how that's going to fit into living your day-to-day life. And Joseph, you're speaking about who are the people that you're going to spend your time with.
Yeah.
And what do you give and get out of that situation and making sure that works for you? I do think, you on March 13th, 2020, people went into a situation where they're like, who am I going to be with? And it was, for that point, it was like 2 weeks. Remember when we all thought we were going back to normal life on May 1st?
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Well, I had, what was it?
Yeah. So I just, but these are all the components, and like, what do we want to keep and what do we not want to keep? What do we want to do differently is also a different concept of like, how do you feel about yourself and what do you want and how are you going to do it?
Sure.
Which is, that's a pretty intense. I'm just thinking now about what we're talking about here and what we're seeing with people trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my day? How am I going to take care of myself? And who am I going to be with?
Sure. Yeah, I think if and I think in all of our work at some point, we've probably tried to do some reframing of the shutdown and trying to find what were some of the, for for lack of a better term, what were some of the positives that came out of it, right? How do we practice this? We go back to the ritual and the practice, right? Mm-hmm. Sports was shut down. Nothing. You know what I mean? So, were there times where you did spend that time doing the reflection and the assessment? Okay, well, how do you re-enter that back into your life now? It doesn't necessarily need to be.
How do you make time without?
Yeah, how do you make up your own little pandemic? You know, in the middle of the week. You know what I mean? Like, ooh, shit! I think
I need some shelter in place.
some shelter in place right now.
Yeah,
that's what you need
in
to do.
essence, is like shelter in place was like self-care day. Nope, I'm canceling everything and I'm just gonna do me. Like, it was forced upon us and unwillingly, and things were taken away. But like, yeah, if you need to take a day because you're maxed out or you're burnt out or you're tired, like, you know what? I don't actually have the capacity to talk to another human being or make a good decision, and I need to like figure out what I'm needing and not feeling guilty for calling and saying, not gonna do the things I needed to do today. Like, I gotta take care of myself.
Yeah, I mean this
right now.
This was only went up, right? The idea, the podcast, the communicating online, like
all of it. Well, because we were not distracted.
So we did everything in our power to communicate with someone else.
Yeah, because we weren't distracted.
Exactly.
And distracted, rightfully so, because you're trying to live and survive your life. Like, I get, at least for myself, why I was doing what it was that I was doing.
Sure.
But at the same time, I think we now want to care for ourself, whatever that self means, because in a way that is going to be different moving forward. And this idea of self-love is this piece around to how you talk and think and care and process like who you are inside. And then I'm with you. The self-care I do feel is a little bit more also external, because you do need other people for that process to usually happen. We need to come up with some different words.
Self-enjoyment.
Yeah,
more passion.
Well, that's part of our culture, though, right?
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation about our language when we speak English. There's a reason why English is like the business language, because we can shorten that shit up. We can acronym it up. You know what I mean?
Categories.
Hey, you know what I mean? It's really Whereas if you looked at other languages, you'd be like, man, you are talking way too much to tell me something very, So, but we do that, right? That's part of our marketing, our packaging, right? Self-care, and we're like, self-care. It's like self-care. It sounds good, right? Like, yeah.
Two words and a hyphen.
2 words.
Boom. You've got it.
Here's a checklist.
Here's some water.
Here's
Have a snack.
Please. But
your care is done.
But taking the time to actually explore, we know that self-care is something so complex and so layered, and it really does take it. We've just touched the surface of self-care within however long, like an hour that we've been talking.
How long have we been talking?
I don't know.
I mean, we're doing the thing. We're wrapping up. We're finishing up because we are at a place right now where we're talking about what does it look like next? And the short answer is that varies person to person.
Person to person, yeah.
And I think that that's a huge piece
coming
out of what it means to whatever the words are. We picked self-care and love yourself for today because we had to pick some language so we could have a conversation. But self-enjoyment, community, I mean, all of those words, they could mean a million different things. But we need to continue having the conversation. And we wanted to have this conversation today because our podcast, we literally say, is for everyone. And this is an element that applies to everyone.
Sure.
There's no one audience or one lane for this concept of whatever it means.
Everybody should have the opportunity to love themselves.
Maybe that should be a shirt.
Everybody should
we
don't have to write it down.
An opportunity to love yourself. We need a song too.
Love yourself. You just made it.
But I'm just saying, everybody should have an opportunity to love yourself.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, make sure you chop that part too.
Yeah.
Make sure that's there's your marketing material right there.
That's true.
Keystone.
everybody.
Everybody.
Everybody, because it's true. But we need to. But that's new, y'all. That's a new concept, because self-love was and still is for a lot of people a privilege. It's not a right.
Well,
And so we gotta. That's I think the piece around why we wanted to have this conversation today is like where that movement is going. We don't know, but if we don't keep it in the conversation with the things that we do, then it's going to go back to what we were doing before, where I don't know what to call it other than it feels kind of distracted and numb and, not joyful. I don't know what the opposite of that is other than like it was not great.
Depressed.
It was not good.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go back there. I don't want to go back to that. I don't. And so that's the other reason why we need to keep the conversation going. If we're going to make mistakes, let's make new ones. Right? Yeah. And so that's also really important in terms of looking at what love and care means as we move forward. But yeah, we just wrapped up our time together.
Boom.
I want to like group hug you all, but like it won't necessarily work with. How about we do a group high five?
No, you can do hand hugs.
Little hand hugs because this table's in the way. We're gonna hand hug.
Hand hugs.
Hand hugs. You all know about hand hugs.
Hand hugs.
If you don't know what it is, watch our video and you can see us hand hugging.
They're actually supposed to go opposite.
Opposite hands?
Like this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Give me your opposite hand, Joseph. We gotta do it one more time. That was
With
like
the
not
thumb
as good.
that way.
Thumb.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
Ooh, that's the right spot.
Feels
Feels a little
good.
Star Trek to me.
It is a little. I mean,
Alien?
we can come up with something better, but we needed to hug because
I'm a hugger.
we love each other here in our time together. So thank you guys so much for coming and being
you.
here.
Thank you for having us.
Great. Okay, excellent.
Thanks for the team behind the
Yeah,
cameras.
thanks, team.
Way to go.
Shout out.
Appreciate it.
All right, thanks. You've been listening to Key to the Bridge, a podcast brought to you by your friends at Keystone Therapy and Training Services. I'm your host, Erica Bosky. Key to the Bridge is recorded and produced by Jeff Henderson and Brian Henderson. This is a podcast for everyone.